Welcome to Workforce 3.0. Today, I'm very excited to welcome Joanna Pinkerton, who is the CEO of Coda. So, Joanna, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, Lisa. Well, thank you for having me today. I really appreciate the time to get our message about our work out to people.
Well, the reason why we wanted to have you is because you know that what you do and what Coda does is so important to the people we work with and trying to make sure that they have access to work. But before we get into that, let's talk a little bit about you. So excited when you were appointed to this position because you and I do know each other and have known each other in our past lives. So tell me a little bit about what got you to Coda and what excited you about taking that position.
That's a really complex question. And I think the short answer is if you stay open to opportunities in your life, you're going to have a really great journey. And I had years of experience with engineering and primarily transportation and mobility, but on the infrastructure side, know how to build things, gravitated into the private sector, and then ultimately ended up at a few state positions. And then Ohio State, where I led our automotive and mobility research. And a lot of that had to do with interactions and endowments with private partners. So I just had a really rapid learning in the last 10 years, I'd say, especially, where I saw this opportunity and a generational shift that was about to happen of how we move people and things. And so I was having a great time doing that. And the board of the Coda's Board of Trustees reached out to me and said, hey, we're looking to really take ourselves into the next generation. Would you come talk to us? And like I said, staying open to opportunities is so important because I don't think at first either of us really thought anything was going to come of it. And we met and talked quite a few times. And it was really clear that their vision for what Coda needed to do in the community and my passion for combining technology advancement and supporting people was a really good fit. So that was 3 years ago.
Yeah, and since you've taken the helm, I mean, you have really played a role in exactly that, looking at how do we move people to where they need to go. And tell me about some of the things that you did when you got there, and what are some of the challenges that you saw? And pre-pandemic, of course, right?
Sure.
Everything is in the before time.
Right.
In the before time,
pre-pandemic.
Yeah, right. The challenges that you saw around those issues and some of the solutions that you and your staff thought you could address.
Well, I think much like you took over an organization and you have this wealth of knowledge and talent you bring with you. You have to do an organizational assessment and your due diligence and really find out where you are. Then the next step is deciding where you want to go. So we did take some time at the very beginning to develop Coda's first ever strategic plan. And through that process, internal engagement with employees and external engagement, I think we interviewed you. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
We learned what the most pressing needs were in the community, and we chose to align ourselves to those. And it's all centered around the principles of equity, diversity, and inclusion. So anything we do, our pillars around data analytics, providing more types of mobility services, all of that is centered around equity. And it's interesting to look back 3 years now and say, wow, there was something in the air. There was a conversation that was happening about equitable prosperity for everyone. And so it helped us understand that even if we do our best job every day, we've got to reevaluate to make sure that we're doing our best job for everyone so that our community could grow not only in size, but in equity. So that strategic plan was really important up front. And you mentioned, this is all pre-pandemic. Boy, I'm glad we had that when the pandemic hit, because when you're having to make tough decisions with little or no information and absolutely no guidance, you need, you need your foundation. You need something to anchor yourself to, and you need a North Star to guide you. And so we made tough decisions on the fly, always centered around our principles of our strategic plan. And, so far it's going well. But after the strategic plan, we started some team building, like many government agencies, and particularly our industry, transit. It's kind of done things a certain way for a certain amount of time.
Yes.
And started recruiting, brought in a chief innovation officer from the aviation industry, brought in a chief people officer from the manufacturing sector, brought in talent of people who may not know transit first, but they could learn it, but they knew environments where people work frontline jobs, but also deliver services to a wide variety of people. So really began to diversify our workforce, and then began working on internal programs for our existing 1,100 employees to help train them and make them feel more confident and comfortable that they are going to be prepared for the mobility revolution.
So what do you think that mobility revolution is going to look like? Or already, I mean, it's already probably here, actually, right?
Well, yeah, it's here, and it will certainly accelerate. I would say digital transformation is the biggest challenge. And I suspect we probably feel like IBM did in the 90s, or like manufacturing did in the early 2000s. It is hitting us at a pace that's unprecedented. And that's a good thing, because it's all centered around, saving lives, mitigating congestion, cleaning up air, providing access to people. But there's a skill set that you have to develop in order to understand how to integrate systems. You also have to be able to troubleshoot things. I can guarantee you that I did not learn a single bit of what I'm doing when I went to school 2 decades ago, right?
Right.
I'm old enough to say I went to school before the internet existed.
Right. Me too. It's okay.
So I would say digital transformation is probably the number one. Another thing, when it comes to the equity conversation, that was not part of the transportation or mobility conversation 50, 60 years ago. It was really about build it, make it big, make it fast. And you didn't necessarily think about the people you serve. So learning skill sets about equity, empathy, compassion, those are not engineering skill traits. They're also not something that you learn in operations, but yet our people interact with the public every single day. So that's been another thing, is learning kind of the human and social skills, social services side, and bringing that type of training to every employee.
Yeah, so it sounds like you're talking about almost a human-centered design ethic for what you do at CODA, right?
That's right.
And so I know one of the challenges I know that we've also faced with our own clients is if they're relying on public transportation, right? How to get to that last mile. You have a system, and you have to be efficient in that system for very good reasons, right? You're not an on-demand system necessarily, but you've looked at innovations for how, and partnerships for how you might rearrange how you are delivering. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. You raised a really good point, and maybe you ought to be CEO of transportation, because you seem to know a lot.
I used to ride the bus. I mean, I love it, but no, not as much as you.
Yeah. So transportation is really a system. And I think we've kind of taken it for granted. We're a couple generations into just expecting that there's a road or a vehicle available for us. And the systems wide approach is becoming more and more apparent. To your point, we have fixed route service, and it covers 562 square miles.
Wow.
And it covers a population base of 1.2 million people. At our peak, we were giving 19 million rides a year on the fixed route system. But to your point, there are neighborhoods where we have upwards of 30 to 40% of homes who do not own a car. A lot of sidewalk gaps, not appropriate street lighting, things that keep people from getting to fixed route service. So in that first 18 months, we took a leap of faith and invested in some new on-demand technology, rolled out Columbus's first what's called microtransit service. It's on demand. And we actually did that in partnership with the city of Grove City. So there was all these really unique factors of like, a little bit of a transit desert. They have fixed route service that we run from downtown to Grove City. But then once you're in Grove City, there might have been an issue, new hospitals going up, new retail. So they said, hey, we think we need more transit, but it's not yet dense enough or ready, for fixed route, high capacity transit. So we thought, good place to try this. Had a willing partner who was willing to give it a try and learn from it and say, if it's okay to fail, which is so important on the innovation spectrum. And also a really great mayor and council, economic development and workforce staff who said, we have people who can't get to jobs, which is such an important part of the mobility conversation. Launched microtransit. We weren't the first in the nation to launch it, but we were the first to launch it run by CODA. Really proud of that. CODA employees, CODA vehicles, it comes with the same brand integrity. And, you see that badge on the arm and okay, they've got me, they've got my back. We've got security systems. We have response times. We have plans. You're not on your own when you're on our vehicle. So launch that. It's a pretty cool system. We're moving almost 1,000 people a week, even during the pandemic in Grove City on that system. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
It is. And it's fully ADA accessible. So that was one thing we tried. And then next thing there was another city, Westerville wants to try it. So we have full micro transit service in Westerville. We've also launched a third zone, smack in the middle of the pandemic. Nationwide Children's Hospital and a few providers on the south side really mentioned the issues around accessibility. So on the south side of Columbus, south of 70, with kind of High Street as the western boundary, the south side now has on-demand microtransit. So you're going to see a future where even if you use microtransit point to point, you'll be able to use it from point to fixed route. And so that's something we're beginning to build out in Central Ohio.
That is so fantastic. So what, in order for CODA to work well, I mean, you are funded by a levy, right? You have a levy and other ways. And you want everybody on the whole continuum of income, right, to use CODA, because for several reasons. Well, first of all, I think, and I'd be interested to know if you see this, that, younger people are less and less wanting to necessarily have a car, their own car. They're more interested in public transportation. And in addition to, people who are a little further in their careers, like, for example, I keep saying, you know what, I am going to go walk down the street, get on the 33 corridor bus that goes down past, it's about half a mile from my office to walk back.
Okay.
How do you factor that in? Because you want to attract those just from having the revenue, right?
Sure. So you're correct about our levy. Our sales tax levy is roughly 98%, 88% of our revenue stream. So it's really important. We use that for the majority of our operating. About another 10 to 15%, depending on the time, comes from people paying when they board. So the more customers you have, the more resources you have then to turn around and support others, right? Prior to the pandemic, that millennial generation, and those who were just looking for a more sustainable lifestyle, whether they cared about air quality, whether they cared about reducing congestion, whether they were tired of white knuckles on the highway, just crawling along. That was our largest growing population of people choosing to use transit. They may still own a car, but they're saying, today I'm going to do this. We will certainly begin to see that customer segment come back now that office environments are changing. But we've gone through an extensive customer segmentation study. So we know the personas of who is using transit. During the pandemic, for example, we knew about the essential hourly wage worker, 60% of whom lost hours or jobs during the pandemic. So we were able to say, okay, we may have to temporarily stop service. We're going to focus on that persona right now. pre-pandemic and then where we are now, we're able to look at each of those groups and say, what do they need? The Grove City example was a really good one where you have people employed, maybe hourly, people trying to access hospitals, and you realize that fixed route is not cost effective. So you come up with other solutions like microtransit. And that was a partnership where Grove City actually pays a portion of that cost. So we have 14 additional requests for microtransit service right now, 14 different cities or neighborhoods. And we're looking for partners to help sponsor that. But we're also looking at, Columbus is projected to grow by another 1 million people within the next 3 decades. I think something that doesn't get talked about very much is that in that 1 million growth, all told, we're also going to see this huge demographic shift. And I know you know these numbers, but our audience ought to really be thinking about the fact that in that same amount of time, we're going to become younger and older, right? The senior population is going to double.
Right.
And the young working class will be the largest class.
Right.
Those are 2 groups who need different transportation resources. The young ones want shared resources. They don't believe in the ownership model. They don't do it. So one thing we've done based on the data of what that group wants and needs, we just started a partnership with Lyft. If you hail a Lyft and you open it up in Central Ohio, it's also going to show you the transit data. It's going to say, hey, this line is this far away and it's going to arrive at this time. So you can plan your trip together, because we found that working with Lyft, more than 2/3 of Lyft users have used it to get to and from fixed route transit.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. So we're just making our information readily available for them. Someday you'll be able to pay for a continuous trip. On the senior side, we already provide almost 400,000 trips a year to ADA and seniors with mobility needs. We are looking for ways to automate that system through our scheduling and our customer service to create efficiencies so that we can provide more at the same cost. And also looking at the different type of vehicles. We are currently 3/4 of our fleet is low emission. By 2024, we will be 100% low emission vehicles. And then we will begin a cycle of switching to 0 emission vehicles because air quality is really important. The younger generation gets it. I hope they fix everything that we broke.
Yeah, me too.
And people, the older population is really susceptible to air quality and emissions. And there's some real serious equity issues around air quality. When you look at what neighborhoods don't have trees, don't have parks, have poor air quality, you could almost map it out based on how the highways and the roads were built. So those are some of the things we're looking at as far as personas of the different type of customers we serve. Because you're right, we have people from every segment who use our service. There's a CEO in town who uses transit almost exclusively, and he rides a line. And there's people who don't, who are job seeking. And I love that mix of people on that particular line.
Yeah, that's very neat. So let's switch a little bit to your own workforce, right? You have a lot of needs. You have, people who need to operate buses. You need people who are mechanics. You have people who need to understand logistics, right? To route plan. It's amazing to me, really, when you sit and you think about all the different kinds of talent that you need to make CODA operate. So, when you look around and you look forward, what do you think about your own workforce needs and whether you're going to have to make changes or, why don't I just let you talk? What do you think about when you think about your own workforce needs?
I think any leader of any organization or people in management, you probably hear this a lot, and I won't say the phrase right, but workforce seems to be the number one topic right now.
We're popular, yes.
So
that's how I think about it, but yes. Yeah, it is
because of everything you're doing. It's just, even before the pandemic, workforce was the number one topic. And now during the pandemic, it was the number one topic. And as we're changing and emerging, it seems to be almost a crisis, whether it's attracting or retaining. So we're 1,100 strong. That's pretty sizable. To your point, a really wide array of skill types that are needed. And we are fortunate to have an amazing chief people officer. I had mentioned we recruited her from manufacturing. She came from the Chicago area. And we needed that type of person who at an executive level could say, how do I continue education for those who, like me, are having to learn new skills because our education, has not expired, but it's matured maybe.
Right.
And then also our frontline employees are highly skilled. So they hold CDL license. And when you think about it, they operate a $500,000 computer on wheels.
Yeah. Wow. Mm-hmm.
And it's really fun to talk to some of our operators who have like 25 or 30 years in, and they're like, we didn't even have power steering. And now they have 4 computers on board and 2 different software systems to run.
Wow.
Yeah. And so think about that 25 years, and all of that technology has happened in the last 5.
Wow.
So we have a lot of partnerships. Our chief people officer has established these partnerships. It's really vital, I think, to work with the state on workforce development, local organizations such as yours, and educational institutions. So each one of our programs has a tie either to the state, a local entity, or an actual institution. And if you want me to rattle them off, there are 10 things that come to mind. First step is commitment to pay equity. In 2019, minimum $15 minimum wage, period. Not gonna argue about it. Tuition reimbursement. We have currently about 3% of our employees enrolled in tuition reimbursement, and they can accelerate to a degree and move into management or other positions. The local union, TWU Local 208, in Columbus City Schools, we established a partnership for high schoolers to do vehicle maintenance internship training.
I heard about that.
I know, isn't it so cool?
It's very cool. Yeah,
I love this. You are actually released from school during school time hours. It's very structured, but you work alongside mechanics and you learn the trade and you're paid. And at the end of the program, you not only have your high school diploma, you have credentials from the state of Ohio, and you have a job offer from CODA.
Yeah, right. I love that. Just let me tell you, that is the model that we are going to be moving more and more towards. So,
well, we will testify on your behalf anytime you need to sell someone on the program. It's phenomenal.
Fantastic.
It is phenomenal. We are a state of Ohio apprentice site sponsor. I think you have to be. We have started educational and development programs beyond like maintenance and apprenticeship. That includes like a journey to leadership. So if you have an interest in management but do not have a degree, we have partnerships with Franklin University where you can begin to acquire credentials. We are also participating in Ohio's Tech Cred program. We have a new training program so you can learn specifically microtransit on demand if you're interested. That actually involves learning a little bit of coding. And this is something I'm really excited about, and I would love to challenge anyone who spends $1 in construction. We're about to, I think it's next week. At the middle of July, we're going to break ground on our largest facility. It's a $60 million expansion and renovation. And the construction company who won the bid committed to hiring interns from the neighborhood. And it's going to be a two-year construction project. And they're committed to making sure that people in the neighborhood have access to intern and apprentice on the job so they can learn skills.
I'm very excited. I will be at that groundbreaking.
Yeah.
So.
I think we twisted your arm into hopefully maybe speaking. I don't know if you know that yet.
Yes. Yeah. No, I am. Actually, good. Normally our board meeting is during that time. And for a whole bunch of reasons, we were able to move the board meeting. It's our annual meeting too. So yeah,
Okay.
I'm very excited to see that and to talk to that company as
Mhm.
well about their commitment. So
Yeah, it's an interesting approach that they took when they pitched us. It was not a requirement. And so now I'm thinking, we spend, roughly $100 million a year. Couldn't we make that a requirement of all of our contracts?
right.
Yeah. So that's just, those are the top few that come to mind. We're really committed to reinvesting in people and ourselves. It's really a good investment for a company.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is. And you really have everything covered. And that's what's great at all levels of your organization. And I do think that when you give people the opportunity to grow in an organization, they will be retained. And even if they don't want to, move into management, not everybody wants to manage people, right? But the fact that they can, if they wanted to, says to an employee that you care about me and what my growth could be. And so I think all those things make your vision as an employer one that I need to twist your arm and take you with me to other employers.
Okay.
Say, look,
it can be done.
Yeah. Yes, it can be done, and this is how you retain talent by letting them know.
I would be remiss. I think I said I was going to rattle off like the top 10. The last one is our commitment to hiring veterans. We are 12% veteran employees at the moment, which is extraordinary.
Yes.
We've had that commitment since I've come on board. We not only take time to honor our veterans, we have partnered with the National Veterans Memorial Museum of Battelle in Ohio State, who have the continuing education and leadership credentialing program for veterans. We, of course, signed on to the governor's veteran employer commitment last week. And so that's a big thing. Like when you can target groups who already have a skill set, you may have 2 years experience in the private sector, but I really appreciate and reward that 5 years of service you had in the field. It's very applicable, and it's a really great way to connect with people who already have really diverse skill sets.
Yeah, no, and I commend you for that because that is a group that we work with in the job center, and it's actually, we're going to see a lot more veterans coming back into the community, especially since now that we've drawn down in Afghanistan and in Iraq. That just means more veterans who are going to be stepping out of their service, and they make fantastic employees.
They do.
And they have a lot of skill sets that people don't understand, not understanding the military, right?
That's right.
I commend you for that. That is fantastic. Well, so what are, when I think about, again, all the things that you've said, what do you think in your mind, top of mind, is the best way that we, who are bringing in, we're connecting with employers every day who are trying to find talent, and then we're connecting with the talent in our job center. What do you think is that nexus of collaboration between us as the workforce board and you as our primary transportation system?
I do believe that in order for our region to grow in a sustainable, equitable manner, I think mobility is going to have to be ubiquitous. And by that, I mean, so I envision every single employee in the Central Ohio region will have access to mobility, no questions asked. So this reminds me of a discussion we had maybe 20, 30 years ago about, wow, how cool is it that employers are providing health insurance? And now it's just, yeah, would you take a job that didn't? Right. And, back in the 70s and the 80s, the newspaper ad used to say transportation required, like you got to get yourself here. Well, okay, if you're an employer and you're having a 30% turnover rate because people can't get there, your con ops are going to have to think a little bit more about mobility as a benefit.
Yes.
We already have a pilot program downtown that was launched in 2019. I'm so sorry, it's hard to remember what year it is.
I know, because we lost one kind of in the
Right,
middle
we
there. even
lost
though
a
we're
year.
both super busy.
In
Yes.
the downtown employers in a specific district banded together and in a partnership. So we discounted our rate, kind of at a bulk rate. MORPC used some air quality funds, and the employers paid, and downtown employees have unlimited access to transit 24/7. It doesn't have to be just for work. Like, you can use it on the weekends. You can use it to go to a ball game. We had 14,000 employees enroll within 6 months.
Wow.
So it is my hope that we can be more of an enabler for systems like yours, for major employers. So if you really take a map and look at our existing system, what would it take for every job along that system to be enrolled in an unlimited transit pass program? I think we can do
That
it.
is fantastic.
And that's our system today. If you draw a 3-mile radius around our system, like the way you access our system, you cover 98% of people in Central Ohio. That's a stunning number. And we have a plan in the next 5 to 7 years to expand our system with high capacity rapid transit corridors. Watch out, we're finally going to become a big city.
Yay!
Stretching up to all the way to the northwest, maybe into another county, to the west, to the east, and down into the southeast. So once we have that type of coverage, why wouldn't we automatically enroll anyone job seeking, anyone needing assistance, or anyone who's employed in unlimited mobility benefits?
Yeah, absolutely. And let me just tell you why I love that. As we're talking about smaller employers or employers where their margin is very small, when we're talking about retail, hospitality, restaurants, and, employers come and they say, help me find talent. And, they tell me what they can pay. And I say, I cannot, change people's minds so they don't understand math. They understand math. Right. So what do you have to do, right? We need to look at job quality. And this is the kind of thing that leads to job quality, right? If I know that as a benefit, you're going to help me get to work and back and to be enrolled in a program like that, that adds to the job quality. So yeah, absolutely find that absolutely exciting. So
I'm going to learn that term. I'm going to codify that, job quality, because when you say that, it makes sense like that. I understand it when you say it like that. We had small employers, coffee shops, large employers with hourly wage workers, namely hotels are one, who said that they can actually track their retention rate. So a drop in turnover to having provided this benefit to their employees. And our role is not only to provide the service, but we were able to discount that, I think at don't quote me, but like almost a 90% discount because of our pursuit of federal grants. We have been aggressive in my time here and increased the amount of grants we've secured by 4 times in the last 3 years. And I do think that maybe someday the state will think about the fact that mobility is so intricately tied not only to workforce, but any type of Medicaid or social service, because those are huge line items on the budget. And we all know that if you can't get there, if you can't work, if you can't get to that doctor, if you can't move, you can't live. And so maybe someday we'll also tie state operating funds to, we'll pay for it, but we'll also pay to get you there, because the appointment or the job doesn't work if you don't work.
That's absolutely true. The outcomes are so much better, right?
That's right. And it leads to a lot of cost savings, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Which allows you then funds to spend on other things. Yeah,
that's right.
Well, you and I are joined at the hip on that. So.
In an ideal world, right?
Right. In an ideal world. Well, so let's, I've kept you so long and I so enjoy this conversation, but I want to ask you my final question. And I ask this of all my guests. So Joanna, if you look back at your 18-year-old self, I know that was only a few years ago, but if you look back at your 18-year-old self and you had to give yourself advice, knowing what you know now, what advice would you give yourself around your career and where you've gone? And
Well, I think one would be good job listening to mentors. I've been really fortunate to have some good influencers in my life. And I'll tie that to, I think you have to be open not only to experiences and opportunities, but you have to keep yourself open to continuously being educated, right? So listen to the mentor. Challenge yourself by having friends or colleagues who maybe think differently than you, who can expose you to new things, because your ability to learn and adapt and change will accelerate. I feel like I'm there now, and that's been the most fun part of my career, like the second half. I think the first half I was so busy working hard, which is what I was taught, and that's a good thing, right?
right,
But I was,
right.
but for those mentors who really influenced me, I don't know that I would have had my head up and been as open to things. So I would definitely tell myself to do that a little sooner, and to not be scared, to believe in yourself that you can do it, and it's okay to fail and just try again. That's the definition of success, is a lot of failure and then that one time that it worked.
That's right. Yeah, you're exactly right about that. I love that. So I hope that we have some of our younger people listening to that kind of advice, right? So nobody's asking them when they're where we are in our careers and saying, well, I wish I would have. They had the benefit of what our wisdom tells us, right?
Yeah.
Well, fantastic. Joanna, I have so appreciated you taking this time to talk to me. And I want to hope our listeners have enjoyed this conversation, and look forward to our next time that we talk together on Workforce 3.0. Thank you.